to my computer. All right, it's now recording. All right, let me share my screen. All right, you ready, Miss Penny?
Yep.
All right.
All right. I don't have my book, but I got all my notes, so I'm gonna just go off of that. Okay, so I know I got a part right here where I said a page though. So one of the main areas that stuck out to me was on page 148 when they were talking about assessments. And to quote, it says, "Do not crowd an assessment item with a lot of noise that is not targeting precisely what we want to measure." And this really stuck out to me because, like I was venting to you guys before, my school has ThinkUp, and they make us do all of our math assessments through that, despite what we're doing in the classroom or what programs we use in class. And as I was reading going forward, it kept saying that you should provide more accommodations that don't take away from the learning target or the standards. So it's like basically saying how I took that was, when we chunk that standard and we have our learning targets, we need to make sure that our assessments directly reflect that and nothing more than that, especially when you have students that you know need that extra support. And I didn't even think about adding accommodations, like additional accommodations that doesn't affect the standard. So like, for example, it was saying like, if you have a math standard and it says kids need to be able to, I don't know, do some type of process, like something that requires steps, but the standard doesn't say they have to be able to do the steps, but doesn't say they have to memorize it. You can put the steps on there for them. Or like if it's something that requires writing, you could put a word bank, as long as those are not words that are in the standard that they have to know. Steps listed, and even read alouds, which is something I do now. That is an accommodation I do quite often. My kids, I do a lot of read aloud. So I thought that was really cool. And then it also talked about, I liked what it was saying about equity with assessments. And making sure that the true difference in equity and not equal, like just because every student got one doesn't mean every student is going to be able to test the same way. And that goes for assessments too. You know, every child learns differently. That means every child is going to test differently. So, you know, I already kind of make adjustments to my assessments. But I just thought that was really interesting. It kind of like clicked in my head, like, you know what, I have EL learners. I need to do a little bit extra with their assessments, or at least have them in a small group table with me while the rest of my whole group is doing stuff, so that I can give them those proper accommodations, so I can see what they really know and what's just being stunted by a language barrier. So yeah, and then I also liked how it was talking about various means of whole group instruction, just doing different things, not just having the kids sit there and listen, have them do hands-on things, pass something around the classroom, turn in talks, and just a chance for the students to like just be in a whole group, but not make it feel like, oh, we're just all looking at the teacher. But yeah.
All right, let's respond.
I'll go. I agree with what you said. I have students with disabilities in my classroom, and I do think as educators, sometimes we get caught up in, well, the child can't do this, and then you give them a grade. But especially in math, it's not about if the child, sometimes you have to be careful not confusing. I'm not asking you to, you can't read the word problem, but if I read the word problem to you, maybe the child can actually do it. So then that tells me reading is one thing, but if you can comprehend what I just said and solve a word problem, you know, we have to think about the fact that that is mastery of that math standard. And I do agree with you. I see that a lot, in that we're not, those accommodations seem to only come during standard test taking time and not during classroom assessments. That's what I got out of what you said.
Yeah, and I like the fact how you do your accommodations, how that you make sure that it's not what's stated in the standard, but you know, giving them the support they need, because that's a part of the one of the expectations is having clear expectations, understanding what it is that I'm asking you to do, and you're giving the support, the language that's needed to demonstrate that standard. So I mean, I see the reflection, and it's something I'm definitely gonna use. I oftentimes try to push my second graders, but to start off, it's good to have a word bank or good to have these strategies listed just for their reference and try to push them into that deeper thinking to move forward and to use that strategy.
Mhm. Ditto.
Perfect timing.
All right, Miss Finney.
All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all for being understanding because I'm yeah.
I'll send it in the chat. Okay.
All right, thank y'all. Thank y'all. See y'all later, okay?
All right, bye.
All right, bye.
All right, so let me go. All right, so I will, let me start. I'm gonna go ahead and present. All right, so the type of reader I am, I actually love the start. I like the understanding of what I'm doing. I'm on page 139. It says this chapter takes the reader through 4 key areas that is essential for equity. 1, teacher expectation and relationship with students. 2, purposeful and clear goal activities, instruction and assessment. 3, consistent collection of evidence, feedback, goal settings by teachers and students. 4, flexible grouping based on what students need at the moment to reach each goal. Reading those key factors, it's just like you're seeing a well-rounded relationship between you and the student. It reflects on you because first you got to know your craft. You got to have clear expectations. So your expectations need to align with whatever it is that you're trying to implement into the environment. Then it deals with relationship, how relationship plays such a vital role in the success of a student. If you are negative and you're always putting your kid down and say they need an accommodation, but you're always putting them down, how are they going to receive you? The book goes in explicit about how your position should be. You got to fix that relationship. It also gives you in the figure, I can't remember what figure it was, but I think it was figure 6.4. It talks about how you should take a sheet down and list what you do exactly with the students that have accommodations and see what your interactions is and to see what you could change, because changing your interactions can actually get the student to meet your expectation. And it all flows, all of that at your relationship, their relationship with each other, with you and them, it all goes into getting collective data. It's just funny how this all ties in together. I understand now why relationships are so important. Even with my kids, I make sure that I always have a joke for each one. I always have a gentle touch so they'll know that they are wanted in the environment, to create an environment where it's inclusive, to where I can encourage them to want to learn. Like, you know what, Miss Maynard got my back. So I'm gonna push myself because I know she's there for me. And that even helps with assessments too. Like when I'm giving them feedback, and it talks about giving feedback. If you have a good relationship with the student and you're saying, hey, you know, it didn't do so well, but it's okay because this is how we're going to move forward. I feel like the student will be more receiving of what you're saying to get to that standard or that deeper level of thinking, to have cross the concept. I feel like I'm rushed every time when I see this time.
Those 3 minutes go by fast.
I kid you not, because I be having so many thoughts that come and I want
Yeah.
to say everything. Let me go to the next slide. All right, you guys ready to respond?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Going to what you said about the relationship and giving feedback, I'm like, even us as adults, we're the same way. Like if it's someone that I have a relationship with, I'm going to listen to them, I take in what they say. Even my principal, like I have a good relationship with him and I want to do a good job. And part of that is because of him and, the work that I see him do. So I guess like as teachers, we have to take that in as well. Like, okay, with the kids, if they're like, oh, she always nags me, or oh, she always tells me what's wrong, or he always tells me what's wrong and never what's right, then they're just gonna zone out and stop listening even to the feedback. So I just believe that, yeah, everything goes back to like really having a good relationship with the kids. And after reading this chapter, I really try to be really intentional today, because I'm like, okay, you have 22 kids. And sometimes it is hard to like, okay, what each one you have a different relationship with. So I was really trying to think about my relationship with each of my students today and trying to see like, okay, which I'm going to go into it, I guess, with my reading a little bit more. But I think that's the best way to make sure students are engaged. And even behavior wise, when you have that relationship with them, they want to perform for you. So that makes a big difference.
I'd just like to add that figure on page 143. Those are some really good suggestions and ideas. Seating them closer to you. That's generally what I do. Joke with them. And I would add on and say, we have classroom jobs. Give that student a job that makes them feel empowered. My student with disability, I just love him to death. He can talk, but he can't write. Everything's backwards. His letters are jumbled. But I always try to make a special effort to do stuff with him.
Mhm.
All right, let's go to the next screen. Is that all right?
Am I
So-
next?
Did you want to go next?
Good.
It doesn't matter.
I could go next then. I want to.
Go
Nah.
ahead now, and then mine will be
Yeah.
at the end. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I can get off my break. Okay. So I come to you from page 142, and it says that there is an overwhelming amount of research that tells us how impactful adult expectations can be on student achievement. And then it says it's heart-wrenching, and we almost wish we didn't have so much power over students, especially based on often unconscious assumptions. Decades of research demonstrate that the interlocking factors of race, social class, and gender frequently lead to teachers making unconscious predictions about students. We often mispredict what students are capable of, and this can quickly become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I just kind of thought back to one, I don't, every single year you already have these expectations of students. And it was this one student that I had, and he was, a little bad in third grade. And the teacher came to me, but I had a different type of relationship with him because I had known him since pre-K. And he, when I was reading about this, I was like, a lot of teachers had a hard time with him because naturally they're like, oh, he's bad. Oh, he's this, they already had him labeled. But when he came to my classroom, because we had a different type of relationship, he really changed and evolved, and he really wanted to do good for me. Because I was like, and I would try to just uplift him like every day. And so I was like, yep, that's kind of the story that I thought about with this is I'm like, oh yeah, when you make those assumptions. And then two, there was one year I was a special ed co-teacher for a couple years. And that crew, I just constantly were like, I'm gonna make you guys the smartest kids in the school. I was like, we're gonna make you, I was like, by the end of the year, y'all are gonna be on top. Y'all are gonna be on top. And my special education kids that year did better or just as good as like they were getting 3s and 4s, which was like unheard of. Like my principal was so proud. He was like, I was like, can I get a trip to Chicago? And he was like, yeah, you can go ahead and get you. He was so happy about that. And it just reminded me like, okay, I need to be like that every year because you set these assumptions for kids, and then whatever you kind of have your mindset to, that's kind of how you perform towards them, and then that's how they perform. And so it was just really nice to see that. And then today, it was funny, like I said, today I was trying to be conscious of my relationship with students as well, because that helps to break those assumptions and that barrier, because you can hear about a kid all day, but once they're in your classroom, you have an actual relationship with them, then that what you hear could be totally different. And so I like that. Like, did you smile at a student today? When was the last time you smiled at that student? When was the last time you asked that student how they were doing? And so it takes a lot of energy, but it's definitely worth it because well, can't go into that story, but yes, it's worth it.
All right, gonna respond. This is what I wrote when you were talking. The power of thought, you think so they are. So it was,
Mhm.
it just, you said exactly what I was saying, and
Yeah.
how, by being positive with them, how your kids grew. Just
Mhm.
imagine had it been the opposite, and because
Yep.
they're already probably been hearing, oh, y'all, you need help, you slow, you this, you that, and how that tears them down. But look how you were able to do with the power of thought. And
Mhm.
this chapter goes deeper into that, like looking exactly like what are your biases, like how do you change it, like you said, smiling. Did you smile at him today?
Mhm.
You know this student can be a little extra, but did you smile? Did you ask how their day was? Because
Yep.
it goes a long way. And with all that relationship, it goes back into affecting how they're going to interact with the standard. And if we got kids that can process so quickly, but if your relationship ain't right with them, they're not going to receive anything you say.
Nope.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kids will work for, they are so intuitive. They can pick up if she doesn't like me. I've had upper
Mhm.
grade kids, I don't want to go because she doesn't like me. And I'm thinking, well, the teacher tell you that? No, but you can tell. And
Mhm.
so we do have to be, as educators, something little a teacher says to you lasts a lifetime. And all of us probably can remember something a teacher said to us positively and negatively. Somebody says something and you can say, oh yeah, when I was in second grade, we probably all have a story of something someone said negative. So this was my favorite, that strategy. I think it's strategy number 1,
Mhm.
changing our language, I think is key.
Mhm.
One of the biggest things we can say to make a difference.
Mhm.
All right, let me go to the next one. You ready, Miss Chelsea?
Okay, hold on. Let me get my
Yeah.
page.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Number 2. Okay, I'm ready.
Righty, I'm starting.
All right, so we're going to go to page 145. Strategy number 2 is work on your clarity. And as a detail-oriented person, this probably hit me right in the heart, because I love to have an engaging classroom, but we have got to be careful as educators not to get so caught up in the engagement that we lose sight of the actual goal. So I just want to read just a little bit. The goal was the steepness of a ramp determines the speed of objects going down the ramp. And so kindergarten students are making ramps out of wooden blocks, sending cars down each one. They're working in groups of 3, laughing and seeming to enjoy themselves in the activity. Teachers often offer different objects to increase the height and steepness of the ramps. Some students squeal with delight upon making a really tall ramp. And so it says, might seem like an exaggeration, but we have observed hundreds of classroom scenarios like this one. And although the activity is fun and hands-on and probably has real academic value in the teacher's mind, the connection to the learning goal is often lost. And I know I have been guilty of that, just being honest and reflective, that you can have a fun task, but did we actually achieve the goal? And I just like the chapter is like work your clarity. Especially when you have those English language learners, it mentions that on page 147, where you have English language learners and you're using um, slang or
Mhm.
sarcasm or jokes that you think and everybody's understanding and appear to be having a good time, the lesson goal can be lost. So that was one of the things that I noticed I liked about this particular strategy.
Mhm.
And it just said there's 3 bullet points. What is the goal? What exactly should I be doing or thinking about in this moment? And why are we doing this activity? And how does it directly relate to helping me reach the goal? Another example, a couple of years ago, I walked in a kindergarten classroom and the kindergarten teacher and the students were counting by tens all the way to 100. that's not a kindergarten standard. They sounded great. They all knew it, but it sounded like a song. And as an upper grades, when you get to second and third grade and children are counting manipulatives, they're singing 10, 20, 30 and have no idea what that is. That
Yeah.
numbers go with things. So that's what I got out to chapter. Sorry.
Very good.
Wow. You want to go? Ms. Chelsea?
Yeah.
I mean, you wanna-
All right. Very good. Yeah. Sometimes I think we get so caught up in like, oh, the appearance of things, how things sound, how things look. Like, am I engaging? Because the school that I'm in right now is very, like, I work with a lot of amazing teachers. And I know at one point I had to tell myself, like, okay, you're getting caught up in like trying to make sure your class is just as fun or just as or that things are looking just as good as everybody else's. Like that's kind of like I had to really like take a seat back and be like, okay, like stop doing that. Like and that's not what it's really about. Looking and sounding good is great, but and making sure that you have the most fun activities and things like that. But you're right, you have to go back to the concept because there have been plenty of times where I plan a really fun activity and then I go ask the kids about it, the actual standard, and then they're like, it's like cricket, cricket, cricket. Like, okay, what did that have to do with this? It was no connection. So I definitely have been there before. I'm guilty of it. And I'm happy that now I kind of have, in hindsight, I'm like, okay, yeah, that was the wrong way of doing things. And now, making sure that they understand the concept more than anything is better.
What I got from that is the whole thing is about balance. So with you reading the figure 660 example, there needs to be a balance. Yes, you want engaging, you want the kids to have fun, but how do you have that perfect balance to have the engagement, but also push the concept that you're trying to teach? So that can be difficult at times because sometimes, let's be real, the standard can be very boring and it can be vague. And so you're trying to bring the joy in it. And we get
Yeah. Sorry. It took up most of the time.
all right, so that should be done with the presenter part.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to share important and interesting ideas around changes in teaching, coaching, and administrative practices. All right,
Where did this come from?
it's been there.
Oh, okay. That's what we normally do.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
I want to share some things that, well, coaching wise, that we do now that I love, bringing the joy in literacy. Often that our children do not love literacy, and I sometimes cringe teaching it sometimes because I know children do not like it because reading is very hard for them. But with this being said, like doing the way that my school does it, it gives me clarity of what I'm teaching. But this also, with this chapter, helps me to say, I got to be positive. If I'm not positive about it myself, even though I'm cringing, that should be out of mind. Because if I'm feeling that way, don't you think you're giving that energy to your students? And so if
Absolutely.
I'm giving that energy to my students, you're not helping the situation.
Mhm.
And so something, like I said, we're bringing the joy in literacy. How do we make this joyful? That goes into that engaging piece, like you were saying, Miss Chelsea, bringing that balance. How do
Mhm.
you have the balance? You got to make it fun. You want them to love reading.
Yeah.
That was just
But-
something that I liked that my school implemented, and reading this helped me to bring it all together.
Yeah, I think it reflects, children reflect the teacher. If you look at your school right now, most of the kids, look at the personality of the teachers, that tends to be the personality of the children in there.
Sure.
And so if you're not really liking your job, for whatever reason, or this is my last year here, the
Mhm.
children have that same energy, and so a mentor, a friend of mine said, if you're planning to quit, nobody in the building should even know it. They shouldn't even be able to tell
Tell,
that
right.
you're struggling with whatever you're struggling with, because they pick up on that. Children pick up on that energy. And so, when I introduce a book, I act like but I like to read. Personally, I like to read. So my kids, we gonna read something every day. So, I may turn the lights off. I'm like, we have a new book.
Mhm.
And then they're looking like, okay, but elementary, that's when habits are formed. So they're looking like,
And sometimes I just start speaking in a British accent
oh,
I
awesome,
do the same.
awesome. And
or
so,
whatever accent, and then they just right away they like start looking like, oh.
right, I'm gonna try to. You got to do so, especially when you're reading nonfiction text, which isn't necessarily my jam. But I'm like, okay, this
Man,
text, but you got to get excited,
those kids probably think I'm crazy. Between you're right, you got to get them excited. Like, stand up on a chair, stand up on a table, start speaking in crazy accents.
Mhm.
Is you do whatever just to get them there. So we're kind of the opposite of you, Nidra. Our literacy, we were so focused on literacy for so long that now the literacy part, our kids are like reading like crazy. The literacy is there, and math is now like
Yep.
and I get out, it's like math time, and the kids are even like their attitude towards it is even, but that's because over the years it's been like reading, reading, reading. AR, you get shirts for this, AR, you get shirt, and
Mhm.
we have not had that same energy in math. So this year they're trying to pick up the math a little bit. They have like the math shirts now that I know my multiplication, and the adding and subtracting math shirts now too that they're giving out. So hopefully that will start helping students to kind of catch up with that. But you're right, it's all about like your energy, and with
Right.
that teacher, we do hold a lot of, just like the book said, it's kind of scary, but we do hold a lot of power
Yeah.
over,
Yes.
how
I
these
was kind of
students.
surprised they put that's in print, because we do. And,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you just have to, it's just like raising your children. You just have to kind of be careful what you say. And
Yeah.
last year we had a second grade teacher. The child was in fifth grade and he got an award. And she said, oh, I'm so glad he's getting an award, because he always reminds me when I was in second grade, I didn't get an award for
Oh
awards.
yeah.
I said, he's going to be talking about that in his adult life.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, fifth grader going to sixth grade. He tells people that, and his second grade teacher happened to be at the school. I just felt bad. She was like, she's, because I said, y'all give out awards for everybody, because I just don't believe in that. But
Mm-mm.
then she told me that that student always has reminded her or somebody else, when I was in second grade, I didn't get an award.
Mm.
That breaks your heart.
Something to think about.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. All right, so we're gonna debrief. Did anything surprising arise in the discussion? Did anyone have a different interpretation of the same passage? If so, did I'm sorry, y'all. I'm having a moment. I had a reflection on something. I'm silently reflecting your journal.
Yeah.
Are we
Okay,
supposed to?
I didn't know that part. I did
Yeah.
silently reflect on
No.
a journal about what you want to do differently in your practice.
Yeah. Every time we talk, and I'm like, it says silently reflect, but I just be letting it go.
Oh,
Okay.
so we're gonna silently debrief. So go ahead, and I'm gonna start the clock, and let's silently debrief for 8 minutes.
All right.
All right.
Gotcha.
Um,
All right.
I think that is the end of that. I'm gonna show my notes because I wanna make sure. I've never did this part, but I definitely got a lot of notes in there.
I had to do mine virtually because I didn't have a pen or pencil, but I'm here.
I will, let me stop the recording.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
Oh,